how has your emotional intelligence grown? I mean, you've been sharing it kind of indirectly, throughout our conversation, but like, how has your EQ grown throughout your career?
It probably grows more through failure than through success, if I'm honest. Right? So I think failures have an opportunity to make you reflect on why that particular thing didn't work and why was I perceived in that way.
Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
Hey, what's going on?
Look at you, man. You've changed so much.
You too. I love the do.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I've gone blonde so I don't go gray.
Because last time you spoke at one of our events, it was short and dark.
And dark, yeah. I'm an entrepreneur now. I need to let it all out.
That's right. How have you been? Tell me, how's everything going?
It's going really well, thank you. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I'm working for myself for the last year, and that's going really well. We won like an Innovate UK Smart Grant. We've signed some big content deals with like the Penguin Random House, and like we're live in the market, and so yeah, it's been quite fun.
What? And this is Zigzag, right?
Yeah, this is Zigzag. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been really, and I'm loving it. Like that, it's like quite liberating to kind of work for yourself and have, the responsibility of it, and and just solving so many different problems, and yeah. And what about you, bud? What's going on?
Man, Kelly, it's so good to see you. This is awesome. So we're doing really good. So we just in February we started a podcast on emotional intelligence, and specifically for entrepreneurs. So it's called EQ for Entrepreneurs, and it's been awesome. It's been such a great journey because my whole life I've been clueless emotionally. So
no, it's so not true.
No, it is. And so it's been such a great journey, and I had no idea how many different areas EQ impacts every area of our life. I just have been clueless the whole time. So it's been awesome. It's been a huge blessing. And then we just launched a course. We started a course for entrepreneurs on emotional intelligence and stuff. So Zigzag. So tell me about Zigzag.
So I back when I was in the Army, like ages ago, right? Late 90s. I was, I lived in Germany, and I read all the time when I was in Bosnia. And then I got back to Germany and I just couldn't, I was too busy. And a friend suggested I get into audiobooks. So I used to take them out on books on CD or books on tape from like the post library. And then, I left Germany, stopped reading, stopped listening. And then, and I, of course, I would try to read, but I was never like as good a reader as I was when I was there. And then I went to work for this crazy startup about a year ago. And I was working like 55-hour work week. I had 2 kids. Like the only way I was going to survive was audiobooks. And I was just like, gosh, they have not moved on in 20 years. It's the same shitty experience that I had. That, it's great because you can listen, but like you miss so much of the book, right? You can't see figures and tables and illustrations, and you can't find your place if you lose it. There's no search. There's no look up words. Like there's no wayfinding. And it just felt, and sometimes I want to switch between reading and listening. So, I got and I had this is funny because I got pushed out. And so I had this money, I got paid, and I had this like whole year to like build this thing before I needed to really start earning. And so I called a friend, an old colleague of mine who's like my co-founder, and I was like, hey, I've got this crazy idea. Do you want to join up? And he was like, yeah. And it unlocked him as well, because he was trying to figure out what to do. He's great at tech, but he hates like tech leadership because he hates the politics of bullshit companies. And so we've kind of found this thing that really works for him and really works for me. And we've worked together twice before, so we know each other quite well now, and it's just been really awesome. So he's just built it, and he like basically my vision, his tech skills, and like together we like built this thing that now exists in the world, and like it makes my life better. I mean, it doesn't yet, but it will soon. And like it enriches an experience on something that's kind of like dominated by a non-innovative company. So anyway.
Wow. And what's your vision for it?
World domination.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just want an alternative to Amazon. In all of my life, I want an alternative to Amazon. And I think there is at least a segment of the population that will actively seek out alternatives to Amazon. And so, we're going to prove that in the UK market first, because this is like my home market now. And I think and we don't need to pick a fight with Amazon right now. But, I think long term, if we prove it here, I think it's very easy to port to the whole world. And I just want this thing to exist. Like, I just want this thing to exist. So yeah, that's it.
And why will it be successful?
Because it's better. I mean, I think because it's better, because we put a lot of effort into making it solve a problem that we think consumers have. And that when you talk to people, and we think it'll unlock demand for a thing that has eluded a lot of people. So like penetration in audiobooks in the UK is like 11% versus 50% in the US. So there is like there is a subdued demand here, and we think it's driven by just like, nobody wants to give more money to Jeff Bezos here. So there's a bit of that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just want the thing to exist, and if we do make it big on the back of that, I think that would be great. And, I'd be really happy to have helped my co-founder do that as well, because I think he's so awesome. He's a guy that didn't go to university, and he's like completely self-made and just a super, super tech wizard. So yeah, it's just it would be really fun if we could do something big. But.
That is awesome. And what phase or stage are you at right now in the experience?
I'd say we're kind of pre-seed. We have the product. We're post MVP, but we're waiting. There are particular complications about some of our contracts that don't let us do everything we want to do. So we've built the tech, and now we're being held back by publishers, literally held back by them. And so we have brought in a guy who understands the publishing business really well to help us navigate that and unlock the publishers. Because if I can unlock that, we know the product's there, and then we can go really hard to the market. But right now we're kind of in this funny mode where we have a lot to say. We can't say it until we sign some deals. And then when we sign the deals, we'll prove to everyone how great it is. But until those deals are the right deals, like it's all just a vision in my head, right? So it's like this challenge of rights and really conservative companies, and people not wanting change, and so that it's just tricky.
But surely they understand the value, because it's got to be a win for them as well, right? A win-win, isn't it? I mean,
they don't follow any of the rules of business. They're not business minded. They're not in any way. They were hired because they were great at like selecting books. It's an industry that is not business minded. You get promoted to levels of leadership not for having great skills, but being a good editor. And so they just, it's so infuriating, because it's like they just don't follow the normal rules. I mean, they don't even respond to fucking emails. Pardon my language, Noble. Just like the basics, like of just politeness.
Wow. Now, surely that's not the same dynamic in the States. Would it be?
No, I think they're a bit more forward looking in the States. I think the particular, I mean, but you don't know what's marketing and what's not, right? I mean, I think it's, it's really hard to tell. All I know is that there are enough big enough people here that should be able to make this call that aren't making the call, that I feel like because London is quite a big hub for publishing. So it's not like it's a backwater in that way, because it is like it's almost like traditional hub of like a lot of these global companies. So I don't know. I have no idea, but it'll be fascinating to see. And I'm glad I've got George as our advisor on this, and I'm just glad I have him on board, because I would have at least somebody who can give me a bit of therapy when I'm frustrated, because like he was quite defensive about the industry when he first came on, and now he's like, oh my God, I totally understand. So yeah, he's really good. He's a good balance in that way.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say all that, because just the entrepreneur, and I love that you're like an entrepreneur now, because entrepreneurs, it's a different thought process. It's a different mindset, and not better or worse. It's just different, and to communicate with non-entrepreneurs who maybe don't understand the vision can be very frustrating.
Yeah, totally. And I think, and it's interesting, because the thing that really annoyed me was he'd be like, Kelly, you don't understand, you're not an entrepreneur. And I was just like, well, actually, if you look at what I've done throughout my entire life, like I have done things that other people don't do. Like, can you give me a little bit of credit? So I have a little bit of a problem with this idea of, oh yes, like we've taken this step, we're self-funding. But actually, in some ways, doing what I did before was also really difficult, because I was trying to convince a 300-year-old company, a company that was older than my town in America, to invest $1 billion in going into Germany. And they had all of these kind of historical reasons why they wanted not to go into Germany, from the war and all this other stuff. And so I do feel like there are a ton of entrepreneurs. They don't have to be kind of entrepreneurs, if you know what I mean.
No, 100%. No, that's a great point for sure. Okay, so man, Kelly, like did you know you were going to be a rock star at school? Did you know like I'm going to just be this gangster like leader and
No, not at all. And you know why? It's like West Point was the first place that ever even gave me a hint of confidence in myself. Like I had never been told that I could amount to anything. I had never been told, and I just remember being so struck by this when we were at West Point, this whole idea of leaders of the nation. And it was just this moment of like, me? Like me? And I find it fascinating. And, I don't know if you had the same experience, but like my observation is like, I talk about like these confidence curves where like women, when we start out at 17, we really think we can do nothing. I mean, like literally, like nobody's ever, I don't know why, but it did not feel like anyone had ever given us this kind of path. And the men all around us were like, we can conquer the world, like I can do anything. And then you get to like 40 and these curves like intersect, or maybe they've already crossed by that point. But women are like, oh, I can conquer the world. And the men are like, oh, I can't conquer the world. I thought I could conquer the world. And there's this really interesting dynamic about it, because like I never believed in myself. And I think it's you get to a level when you're kind of, and there's a risk to it as well, because you're fearless. And fearless is also very threatening to a lot of men who aren't fearless anymore. And I think it's just like this, it's a really interesting, observation about society.
No, that's fascinating. And I probably wouldn't fit that category. Just again,
no, exactly. But it's like a broad generalization.
No, but it is fascinating insight. Man, I've got to, because having a daughter, man, I want to make sure that I want her to know, hey, you can change the world now, not
yes,
not wait.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and not have to go to some bigger institution in order to get that message.
Right.
And and I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's not like my parents were not support it. It's like, and even, but they were also quite small, right? I mean, the stage that they existed on was quite small stage. And so they didn't have a national perspective in some ways. And again, it's a lot about where your perspective is like, but there was this level, I'd come from this small town and my parents had come from this small town. In fact, I went to the high school my dad went to. We had the same teachers 27 years later, right? I'm literally the same teachers. And, and then to go to West Point and then to be lifted up, not to a level of like, state, then national. And I think it's just really interesting. Like your perspective does change a bit. And then I went to institutions like McKinsey, which was like a global perspective. And then, yeah, and it's just really interesting. Like, how do you elevate your perspective to move yourself? And maybe, and it's not good for everyone, right? So some people are really happy not moving beyond their perspective. And so, it's hard to say everyone should be pushing that way, but I think it's just more like, how do you create the opportunity for people to feel welcome going to these other levels of these other stages rather than just staying, where they are, where they're comfortable and where it's safe.
How do you do that?
I think it's a lot of self-selection, right? So I think people select to go to a place, you go to a place that challenges you, basically, and that you feel like can offer that thing to you. But I think most of my stuff has just been completely like lucky, my whole decision to go to West Point consisted of me getting a brochure in the mail and my sister saying like, you can't get up that early. And I was like, okay, I'm going to show you. Like, I'm not joking. That is how that whole thing started.
No!
Seriously, yeah. I don't put a ton of like pre-planned thought. Like I went to McKinsey because the smartest kids in my business school class all seemed to be from McKinsey, and I was like, well, I want some of that. Like, so I just get lucky. I'm just really lucky, and I think and luck I think plays a huge role. Luck plays a huge role. So
really,
yeah, I think it's yeah. I mean, I could tell. I'll tell you. I just think there's this whole concept in America of the self-made person, and I think it's complete bullshit. I think that people can certainly do a lot, but your circumstances and your privilege and everything helps, has a role to play, and you can get incredibly lucky. And I think we have this narrative that we tell ourselves, like, oh no, I'm completely prescient in everything that happened up until this point. And you're like, life doesn't work that way, and so I think it's really interesting. One of the observations about that boss that made me listen to all these books was that they were mostly white male hero worship, and they were all white men taking incredible credit for every single decision that went up to the point of their being successful. And like, oh, weren't we so insightful at that point? And you're just like, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And I find it really interesting that there's not a dialogue much more about like, well, I've been very fortunate, I've been very privileged, and it's all like, no, of course it was all me. So. Sure.
No, that's a great perspective, because where you're born, what country you're born in, who you got exposed to, who you met, there's a thousand. No, I've always felt like that was a misnomer. Like, dude, like there are other, and not just all the environmental stuff, but again, the connections, the people,
totally, yeah.
You know what I mean? The open doors and that kind of thing. So yeah, I have, that's always kind of rubbed me wrong, the whole self-made concept. I haven't thought about as much of the luck, you know what I mean? Because so let me apply that like to your life. You've had 30 years of luck. Like, how does that happen? Just looking back at your LinkedIn profile and like president of that, Harvard Business School and McKinsey and president of this and president of that and COO of this. I'm like, wow, you're like amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I do think I've created some of those opportunities for myself through hard work, but I think some of them again have just been luck. Like, why did I get into McKinsey that day versus someone else? And here's a really good reason, which is I went to a friend of mine and I said, who used to work there, and I said, give me give me a case. Like, and then the case I got when I went to that office was the exact case I had practiced, right? Like, so it was like, this was lucky, right? So I knew how to break that case down, but it was like, so it's a bit of me working hard, and it's a bit of me being incredibly lucky that I got the guy who was going to give me the exact case that my friend had given me when I was preparing. So that's all I'm saying is, like, I just don't like this narrative of it being completely, like I controlled every aspect of it. It's like, no, I think I am incredibly lucky, and I'm not religious anymore. So it could have been, I think a lot of people right now say, like, oh, I was just very blessed. Like, you were just lucky.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
so that's kind of my, that's my view.
Wow. Okay. So West Point gave you kind of like your first vision, like, oh snap, I can, like, maybe I can be a part of kind of changing the world or playing on a larger stage. How did that theme or thought continue? Like, so once that seed was planted, were you like, okay, like I'm going to change the world at some point. I want to play on a bigger stage, or what drove you?
Yeah, I mean, I might have had a little bit of that already. Like, so this desire to change the world. I remember, I went and I studied environmental engineering because I believed I was going to, like, save the environment. And I've done nothing at all on that ambition. I think from there, I knew I kind of wanted to get into business. So, and again, this is like, the reasons why I wanted to get into business were also really silly. Like, my sister was in business and she wore nice clothes. Like, I just really like that. So, like, I'm just super, I can be really honest with you, but, there's a bit of it, which is you sometimes make silly, you make silly decisions that end up working in your favor. And I remember also Holly Flores. You remember Holly Flores? Holly Hughes at the time. Yeah, really good friend of mine.
I just saw her on a web conference this week.
Oh, you did? Oh, so cool. But I remember Holly Flores once pointed out to me when I was when I was still at West Point, and she said there was a professor, a woman professor in BSNL, and I remember Holly saying to me, like, she went to Harvard Business School, and I was like, what's Harvard Business School? And Holly was like, oh, Harvard Business School. And so then again, she'd like, she had planted that seed in my head, and I had never have thought of it. But then for me, I knew immediately, as soon as I went to the Army, that was my next goal. Like, I was going to get to Harvard Business School, and I might go back and teach, because I kind of always had this idea that I might go back and teach. But that the key thing was, like, getting in and making that decision at a later stage. And I did, like, kind of, again, I was super lucky because I didn't apply. And like, they do these rolling admissions where you're supposed to really apply kind of in December. And I didn't apply until February. And I was like, well, last people they let in. It's just like, again, I didn't feel like I was ever well advised and like, oh, you should think through these things. And some of it is like, maybe I've never been good at taking advice or seeking advice because I've always been so independent, and I don't like relying on other people. But there's this kind of idea of like, if I could have asked for help, maybe I would have set myself up a bit. It would have been easier for me. But on that, so that was how I got to there. And then again, I got to the next thing because I was like, oh, these people are really smart. I want to go work there. And then, I guess other things have just kind of happened by luck. So I'll give you one more sense of luck, which was when I was leaving McKinsey, I'd had my first child, and I knew I was going to leave McKinsey. I had like literally an accidental breakfast with a woman who sat on the board of the company I ended up working for. And it was totally accidental because her husband had updated he left McKinsey, and he had updated his phone number to his wife's. So I was texting her, thinking I was texting him. And I set up a breakfast with him, and it turned out that she showed up. And I was like, I don't even, and then I ended up getting the job out of that. So I'm like, luck has a huge role to play. A huge role. For me anyway. Yeah.
Now, were you like a 4.0 student at West Point?
I was. Well, I was. I was like I had a 3.69 or something crazy like that.
Oh my God!
Did you not know that about me? I love it. I kept that a secret. Yeah. I was like the biggest slacker. I was a star and wreath person. I think I graduated with I I think I graduated. I don't know if I graduated with both, but I had both. I had the wreath most of the time, and I think I finally got the star, my like penultimate, like the second to last term.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
Yeah, no, I kept that really quite close. But I sat in the front row at graduation with Joe Upples. Like we were totally.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Kelly, that's incredible.
How did you not know that? I thought you'd know that.
No, I did not realize that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I remember being, do you remember Fat Brew, Bill Blair?
Yeah.
So Fat Brew was my first sergeant, and Fat Brew was quite smart, right? He had like a pretty good GPA, and he was my first sergeant at Buckner. And there was like, we were hanging out and having so much fun, and then like about 3 weeks into Buckner, he turns to me, he's like, "Why are you the CO?" And I was like, "Well," and like we were comparing GPAs, and he's like, "I never would have guessed that about you." I was like, "I know. I'm a slacker, but I can study."
Oh my goodness, Kelly, that's incredible. I always tell people, like, if they find out I went to West Point, like, "Oh, you went to West Point?" I said, "Yeah, I graduated the bottom third of my class."
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah.
So how was your Harvard experience? How was your McKinsey experience? Like, go a little bit into those.
So Harvard was probably the most humbling experience because
really?
Yeah, so I had been a rock star at West Point, even if it was a secret one. And then I've been the kind of rock star in the Army, like I'd done really well. And then you get out, and then you get to this place where like everyone's been rock stars, and they've been rock stars in a far more relevant field than you have been. And they've been even bigger rock stars. And you're just like, oh yeah, and you feel really, I didn't even know. I was terrified. I mean, I remember being so intimidated by the whole thing. Like, I didn't know what to wear, right? So I didn't even know what clothes were cool because I had been in uniform for so long. And then I still have this, like, I still get physically embarrassed when I think about what I showed up the first day of school to. Because I had this like crazy, like funky short haircut, and like all these other women were like sleek long hair and like jeans and high heels, and I was wearing Doc Martens. It's like so. Yeah, I just look back and I think, and then there like I didn't understand the language, so I was supposed to be in this like this class to like catch up, where we put all the military people, but because I got in so late, I didn't get into it. And I thought it was because I was so smart. And it was just like, no, because you applied so late, so they didn't have any room. And then I really missed out on that. So then I started, and I was really intimidated by everyone. And like, I had a terrible time there. I made some really good friends, and I made friends with people who I think felt equally like an outsider, like I did. And so I think we have a very strong bond. And even people who should have been insiders were outsiders. So this guy is like the scion of this like, ridiculously wealthy Indian family. And he felt the same. Like he felt like, and people don't share it while you're there, but they share it afterwards. And he remembers being so embarrassed by one of the teachers for like, showing up late. And it's really interesting that I think people find it's an incredibly intense place. So it's more socially competitive than it is necessarily intellectually challenging. And that is just something I've just never been good at. And the networking I found really challenging because I just didn't have a ton of confidence in myself. And then everyone was out there and they were also confident. And you do get the sense of like, there were a ton of privileged people, right? Like, this is the first exposure to real privilege I think I've had in my life. And like, you can see, I can see it now. I couldn't understand it then, but you could see how much more prepared privileged people were for that environment than I ever was going to be. And I think if I had been exposed to anything like that in my life, then it would have been easier. But I hadn't. And so it was such a tough place. And then I also felt really stupid. So I didn't feel like I was learning a lot because I was focusing more on the social side rather than the intellectual side. And I didn't have you're supposed to have a study group, and I never got into a study group because it felt like everyone had already paired up and I didn't know how to reach out to people. And I was really, it's interesting, this world, this transition from like the army to the real world where, I remember it being really struck with it at McKinsey, just like call this partner in Seattle and get him to tell you everything he knows about this particular issue because we're trying to solve it for this client. And I'd be like, I can't just call a partner in Seattle. And they're like, no, call the partner in Seattle. He's waiting for your call. And like this idea of like collaboration and sharing, where it's like, I think in the Army, just, it was like you focus on your area and like you don't talk to that officer over there because they're, unless you know them socially. So yeah, I found it an incredibly difficult transition. And so part of my McKinsey aspiration was going to learn from a place that was going to give me more knowledge than I felt like I had. I didn't feel confident in what I knew or my ability to apply it or what I wanted to do with my life. And so McKinsey kind of fulfilled that for me. And it was like, it felt like I remember having 2 years of like pretty intense training and then getting to that place where I was like, oh, I'm actually quite good at this now. Like, and then feeling so much just the confidence kind of coming back after, probably a 4-year hiatus that kind of took me back to that place. So
McKinsey is where your confidence kind of helped you take to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. Where I felt like it was restored because it is a very supportive environment and very structured, which is kind of what I needed. Because I'd had an internship at a startup and I just was really struggling. I needed people to kind of tell me what to do a little bit so I could learn. And then once they taught me, I felt like I could, then I can take it from there. Right. But and that's what I feel like I got.
What were some of your biggest lessons that you learned at McKinsey?
Don't stay too long. I think, one of the big things you learn at McKinsey is like the value of structured problem solving and the ability to look at a very complex situation and make sense of it and have to quickly make sense of it because you move from 3-month project to 3-month project and you need to kind of get in, understand what's important, and make sense of it really quickly and then hand it back to the client and then move on to the next thing. And it kind of repeats. So that's one. I think the power of of networking in an organization and not networking not necessarily for individual gain, but for information gathering and information sharing and like how you can learn so much from an organization just by going and talking to people who aren't the CEO, right? And I think that's really powerful because you have to build a bunch of relationships to get stuff done. And I think that served me well when I got to Grad, which was a much more relationship-based organization. Like it was all who there was no structure and no process. And so you had to get around and you had to make friends with everyone and get them to want to support you. And if they did, you could get the entire organization behind you. And in the end, we did. Like we tried to launch the Germany business. That was exactly what happened. It's like everyone wanted on board. And so it was like we had to push people away because everyone wanted to help us out. But so yeah, I think that was a really powerful lesson from McKinsey. Like the power of people and like knowing who the experts are and how do you get them to kind of help you and listen and I guess I think I also learned a really good lesson at McKinsey, which was like, your success is dependent upon the success of your team. And if you make your team successful, you will be more successful. And you have to put as much effort into that sometimes. That's hard. It's effort. You sometimes are, if you're lazy or if you're busy, it's really hard to make that effort. But actually, it pays dividends because those people will have your back forever. You'll be able to hire them back into like any role. And also you just get the most out of people. I think you inspire people to do things that they never think is possible because you kind of take the time to invest in them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. How has your emotional intelligence grown? I mean, you've been sharing it kind of indirectly, throughout our conversation, but like, how has your EQ grown throughout your career?
It probably grows more through failure than through success, if I'm honest. Right? So I think failures have an opportunity to make you reflect on why that particular thing didn't work and why was I perceived in that way? How do I need to? So what I'm really bad at managing up. Right? I'm really good at managing down. I'm really good at taking care of my team. I'm really good at protecting them. I'm really good at helping them understand what they need to do to develop. But I'm really bad at being political and telling someone what I think they want to hear because they want to hear it, not because it's the right answer. And so I think that is probably, it's like a thing I know I need to kind of improve on. And I think I probably lack empathy for people who are very privileged and who are in very successful roles. Mm. And that hurts because it hurts me. I think sometimes it hurts my relationship with them because I'm a type of person who's just like, just fucking get on with it. Like, we're just going to knock this out. Like, you're paid well enough to be able to handle this. Like, I'm paid well enough to handle this. You're paid well enough to handle this. Can we just handle this? And then, but actually I think I'm surprised at how much nurturing certain people need. And like, you know, especially men, actually. And I would say more so men than women need more nurturing. And I find this because I have a son and a daughter now, and I've actually learned this. I think having children helps you understand the different, you know, and it's rash generalizations, but these differences between, like, and I think it was like completely eye-opening to me that I felt like my daughter at 6, I could send her out to the world and she would make her own way to school, like, whereas my son wouldn't leave my side. And and I just think it's just, so I guess, yeah, childcare has helped, and then I think failures have helped, and you know, I've always been in environments in which feedback and professional development and values were quite important to those organizations. And so I think that suits me well because I feel like that you get people investing time in you and telling you, you know, sometimes not necessarily always what you want to hear, but certainly helping you kind of understand the things that you can do to be better. But I think actually there's a really important skill here, which is empathy. And I think I do have a ton of empathy for people as I said, on my teams, but I probably could do better at developing empathy in myself for my peers and, you know, people more senior than me, but, you know, which I kind of struggle with a little bit. So
that's great. So kind of now more of a macro question: how important is EQ in the workplace? You're from Harvard to McKinsey to all your CEO and C-suite positions, and now CEO and, you know, co-founder, entrepreneur. How important do you feel EQ is in the workplace?
I think it's super important, but I'm not sure it's always important for the right reason. So I think that there is a bit of like high EQ signals your ability to kind of see the landscape, but it also is like, how sensitive are you to the political environment in which you operate, right? And there's a ton of politics at a lot of these big companies where you realize that mediocrity is welcomed and embraced in a lot of time. And even like really big successful companies, mediocrity is kind of completely acceptable. And so when you get into a place and you're trying to have impact, and I am one of those people that's just going to go at it, right? We're going to achieve this thing, and let's, everyone excited? Yeah, let's go. And I go and achieve it. But it has an effect of like upsetting other people who believe that the status quo is the way it should always be. And so I think if you're too sensitive to it, I think that there are times when you would be like, oh, well, I'm going to upset him, so I'm not going to do anything. And I actually think that it's almost like, you know, there's just like everything. It's like everything in moderation. And I think, yeah, I guess that's my view on EQ and organizations. Like, it's so important, but is it too important sometimes that it's actually impacting? You're holding back, you know, people who could potentially do more if they were less worried about what everyone thought about them or how it made everyone else feel. And I think that, you know, and I'm not saying do it completely brazenly, but it's just a really difficult balance. And so it's just tricky. Yeah.
No, and I think for me, because I have come from, I'm a recovering people pleaser addict. And so,
really? Yeah.
Oh man, hardcore since I popped out of the womb, man, I've been a hardcore people pleaser. And so what EQ has done for me has it's actually helped me, because I was so hypersensitive. Again, I had low self-awareness. I had low social, well, I had semi-decent social awareness. I just had terrible social management. And so growing my, EQ has really helped me. I'm still aware, so I'm socially aware of some of the dynamics. I'm not saying I know all the dynamics, but and because now I'm more self-aware and I'm a recovering people pleaser addict, my social management now, I'm more apt to not people please and say, hey Kelly, I appreciate that perspective, and let me see if I understand you. Okay, now can I give you maybe a different perspective, a different way to look at it? So it's actually helped me to be more firm, I guess, more confident versus, catering to everyone else's feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's so dependent upon how people perceive you, right? I mean, I think this is the challenge. It's like, so for a very kind of directly spoken, somewhat strident woman, right? Like my ability to sort of challenge someone is completely dependent upon their willingness to hear it from somebody who they think should be at home and not working. Like, and there's a lot of that here, I think. So, I think you get into, I definitely think this is a thing. Like, it's a dynamic. I have enough women friends who are senior executives and know how they have, like, this has impacted them, to know that, there are certainly men with wives that don't work are probably going to find me difficult. And they're all, no matter what I say, no matter how nicely I word it, or even just me, they might just have a problem with that. And I think it's just really, it's tricky, because I think, again, if I'm super sensitive to that, then, I'll go home. And then and I think this is the whole challenge of diversity at the moment. It's like, actually, everyone says they want diversity, but they don't like how it makes them feel. And actually, the whole point of diversity is, like, we're not all going to agree. So you need to feel comfortable with other people disagreeing with you. And so if people aren't like that, then then I think what you just said, still people might be offended by, right? I mean, I think this is the whole challenge.
Yeah. So, man, that's so interesting. Because, like, again, as the healthier I've become emotionally, and I guess I grew up, my mom's a little Hispanic lady. And so she raised me speaking Spanish. And most of my life in my social circles, I have been the minority. So I've got a ton of black homies, some Hispanic homies, some Asian homies, and a handful of white homies. And so the diversity deal, and for like Thanksgiving, my whole life growing up as a kid, we'd have enchiladas and tacos and you know what I mean? And so then when I moved to Fort Bragg to Fayetteville, and they're like, hey, so what'd you have for Thanksgiving? I'm like, tacos. And they're like, what? Like,
what are you, Mexican, right?
Right. Are you communist? Like, how dare you? You're supposed to have grits and chitlins.
Oh, interesting. I never knew that. I didn't appreciate that it made you seem foreign to people. You know what I mean? I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, now
because you're such a corn-fed white boy to me.
That's right. That's right.
With the greatest respect, of course.
Right. That's right. And so for me, like, EQ has made me value and desire, like, that diversity even more.
Totally. It's like me with my messed up accent. Like, I'm neither American nor am I accepted here as an English person. So I'm lose-lose.
That's right. Do you feel like that dynamic that you're expressing is as prevalent in the States as it is there in London?
I don't know, because I've not worked there in, like, I've been here for 15 years. I think it's different, and I think it's more I think it's changing, but I think we talk about this a lot, the difference with my husband, actually, the difference between like sexism in the UK, which is much more polite and much more civilized. And you couldn't possibly call us out on it because we're just being so gallant. Even if we're it's like this it's almost nefariously subtle. So it's hard to call out because it's all very polite. And it's not even like sexism, right? It's just like, again, it's like this, you can tell my view is not welcome. And they're, and I've literally had men who cannot sit in a room with other women and listen to them. They'll speak only to the men. So I think that is the thing here. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think it's a product of the schooling here is very sex disaggregated. It tends to be. And so I think there's a sense where you could go through your entire career, you could go all the way to university here. And I would say there's a majority of the population, including the whole fucking royal family, who have gone through schooling completely single sex. And so and specifically men in some of the most elite institutions here are male only. And so as a result, and you still have even clubs in London that are not open to it. So you get this kind of like traditionalism that I think is like one thing. In America, it's a little bit different. Like, you still haven't elected an American president that was a woman. And the one that you had, the one that you had the potential to do, people found so unpalatable. Why? Because the media made her incredibly unpalatable. And I think there is this thing which is actually it's a bit nastier in the US from what I think. It's like it turns nastier more quickly.
Oh, sure.
And I think that there's I just don't know. I guess I just don't know. I do think that there's a difference in the way it's manipulated. So I think like sexual aggression and all these other things and sexual harassment, I think, are more prominent in the US than the UK. Yeah. So you're getting more to that kind of power dynamics. And as long as you know your place, you'll be fine. But I don't know. I haven't worked there, so I can't really talk about it, but I know it's different. I can't articulate how, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, one dynamic, just since we've been in this whole EQ world for a few years now, very intentionally, and just looking what's going on in the US right now, the emotional health and emotional intelligence of our country is just does not seem to be super great. Just there's so many, the number of kids that are seeing counselors and mental health therapists and psychologists, the number of there's so, I talked to a professor yesterday about emotional health and emotional intelligence and entrepreneurship and stuff, and the number of students of new college students that are seeing mental health therapists has like quadrupled or some massive number. It just seems like the emotional coping mechanisms and the emotional health overall of our society is just not go. And then, of course, throw in 2020, which I feel like has exposed a lot of a lot of that stuff and a lot of all of our inability to cope and relate and understand each other just on a human being level. It's like, why do I have to vilify you if I don't like your glasses or I don't believe in glasses? Okay, well, but that doesn't mean you have to like eviscerate your neighbor.
Yeah, no, but there's so, I think that this is where I really struggle with social media. I can't really see its social purpose, if I'm honest. I think, you really see the worst in people when it becomes anonymized and when it becomes behind a screen and when it becomes your keyboard rather than a human interaction. I think the environment for the work-life balance in the US is completely off. And I think I would find it really difficult to ever work in America again, given that dynamic. And I think you don't take enough holiday. I don't think you appreciate how out of whack that balance is because you've come so far away from it. I think things like eating and food plays a role that you don't appreciate because everything in America has become so fake and so manufactured, and then I think there's a layer of complete inequality in a society that is not working for everyone, but working for big corporations and big money men, and and then a narrative that completely deflects that into like blaming minority groups for like all the ills of society. And like that's my narrative of America at the moment, and that's why I'm in Europe. Like, and I love it here, and you know, we have our own issues, but I think there are a few things that we get right here: social safety net, the work-life balance, the ability to take holidays, and the encouragement of taking, like, you know, literally 30 days, 28 days a year minimum is like is a thing here, and it's really healthy, and I think it helps people reset. And this kind of concept of like sitting down to eat, not just rushing through your day and takeaway and like all of these things just like slow you down. They help you kind of appreciate life, and I think the lockdown has done that to a great extent here. It's made people like slow down, appreciate what you have, appreciate the outdoors. But yeah, I think I would really struggle to move back to America after having lived there for so long.
Yeah, well, those are great perspectives. When we went to Spain, my cousin was stationed in Spain in Rota, the southern.
I've been.
Oh, no way!
I totally have, yeah.
Oh.
I was traveling when I was doing space A hopping when I got out of the army, and it's like the most stunning place on earth. Amazing.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And you know, of course, he was Air Force, so like obviously you'd be stationed in Rota, you know what I mean? Versus like Fort Polk or something like that.
Totally. Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
That's right. Or yeah, Fort Benning, right? All the right. So the Air Force has got it figured out. And just going to Rota, it was so funny. You know, the first day was like a Monday or Tuesday, and we're walking through this, you know, beautiful little town, and in fact, we may have been in Cadiz. It's so beautiful. So anyway, we're walking, and I'm like, oh man, it's, you know, I'm hungry. Let's go eat. It was like 10, 11 o'clock. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. One of these neat little tapas, you know, bust out some tapas and stuff. And so, you know, go to the door, and it was locked. I'm like, what? It's not a weekend. It's like, it's Tuesday. What? And it's like 10 or 11. And the sign on the door said, we're open when you see us. We're closed when you don't. And I was like, what? How are you in business? You can't be. Right.
You can. You absolutely can. And you can maintain your sanity that way.
Right. That's right. Well, and to your point,
so
I think
funny.
It's obviously, I feel like it's better for your mental health and your emotional health when, you know, and the siestas, right? Like, hey, we're shut down, dude. It's time to chill. You know, like,
yeah, exactly.
And
it's funny because I know, yeah, no. So that's exactly what I was going to say. So I had a friend that moved over from LA to London. She was horrified. She was like, gosh, every company has a revenue prevention department. And I was like, yeah, but that's because revenue is not the only thing to optimize for. You can optimize for life. And I thought it was really interesting because obviously I'm completely like, I'm so left wing. I'm so into it here. Like, and I just thought it was so funny, like her inability to appreciate what I feel like I really appreciate now. And you know, she's never gonna last long here, so she's back in LA now. But I just thought it was really interesting. It's like, yeah, but isn't it great that they don't optimize for that all the time? Because like there's so many other variables in life, and I just think it's really. But yeah, so we do occasionally still limit the revenue prevention department, which is a very handy kind of word, you know, tautology to use. So.
Wow. How do you maintain your mental, emotional health? How do you maintain that balance as an entrepreneur, startup, you know, big baller business lady? How do you maintain that balance?
One is I've got a fantastic husband, and I talk about him all the time. I think we talked about it the last time we were chatting. It's just like he does a ton, and he's a good balance to me, and he keeps me in check, and like he tells me when I'm being ridiculous, and we have a very healthy partnership in that way. and I can go to him for advice, and we have a very like honest and open relationship where it's not overly polite. It's just kind of very real. So that's one, and I think that's important. And my kids, and like we both take the time to kind of spend the time with the kids, and so kids don't cause us, I mean, they cause us stress, but they don't cause us tremendous stress because actually they're doing quite well. And so we're very fortunate also that they're healthy and they're intelligent and they are quite independent, and all the things that we kind of set out to do. And I guess we've been very purposeful, I think, in how we raise them, and we're very vocal about how we talk about how we raise them. And when something goes wrong, we'll both kind of reflect on it and talk about like, okay, this thing went wrong. Can we talk about it? And it's just like, I think some people might find it a very incredibly like unromantic, but it's actually, it's super practical, and it's like a real partnership, and it's not, it's not, idealistic in any way. It's just real. And I'd say, and he taught me how to just chill the fuck out, like he taught me how to, he always warns me about drinking the Kool-Aid at the place I'm in, and he always warns me when I'm pushing it a bit too hard. And sometimes he's right and sometimes he's not right. But I mean, I do think he's really good at kind of, or he's like an early warning indicator, right? of like, okay, you're, this is getting dangerously close to being crazy again. Can we talk about this? So that's one. I think having worked hard and being fortunate enough to have made enough money in my life, it creates choices for me. So I don't have to work for the asshole men or the asshole women, because they do exist as well. But like, I don't have to work for assholes anymore. And I think that's quite liberating. And so we try to teach our kids about, you work hard to create options for yourself. And if you work hard early, it makes it much easier to choose what you want to do. And I think that's, again, my husband's not working at the moment, and we have them, and that's fine. We've got the savings to be able to support that. And so I guess, and that kind of taking time out. So I've also taken time out of jobs, and I just think some of these things they're not cultural things that you can do in America, but you can do them here, and they're super important, I think. And then I think friends, so recognizing also where you get your energy from. So one of the things I found when being an entrepreneur was like, I'm sitting at my desk working from home all the time, and this is before lockdown, and I was just like, I'm so lonely. Like, I'm super social. I want to be out meeting people. So I just so then I'm the organizer. I'm like, okay, I've got a handful of people on a regular basis who I'm kind of, connecting with and trying to see in person, because if I don't see people, I feel like it's just like something that energizes me, and kind of knowing it energizes me. And then I think probably the last thing is exercise. I do find exercise actually helps keep me sane, and it doesn't have to be super aggressive exercise for me, but regular kind of just what I call micro exercise, actually, where like, I walk up all the escalators. When I take the tube, I try to walk places instead of driving, and I try to, if I can, walk instead of taking a bus, or like all these things. Or I'll take my cycle into town if I'm not going to do any other exercise during the day. So it's not like I'm out running or like lifting weights, but it's just like I try to build it into my world so that because I know it keeps me sane. So I guess it's probably self-awareness.
Yeah, that's great. Love those. That's awesome. What do you feel is like your purpose or mission in life?
I think it's, I don't have like I think I've probably changed, again, when I started, when I was a young kid, I was like, I was going to save the environment. And you kind of maybe get a bit realistic about what you can achieve. And so now it's like, I just want to raise some really great kids, and I want to, have a great relationship with my husband, and I want to build things that make other people's lives better. And I think that's kind of probably where I'm settling into in terms of my ambitions.
Love it. And kind of a sub question to that one is, what values do you value? What do you value? What are some of your core values?
So I value honesty, and I think it's really important. And I think being honest with yourself and people in your relationships, I think is really important. I value kind of investing in people, I'd say, in that, whether those are my kids or, my relationship with my husband or my co-founder or people that work for me. Like I do, and all my friends and this whole network of people that I have around me is just like, so I think people energize me. So therefore I value those relationships really strongly. And I think I probably just value time. Like time is really precious. Like everything I do, I try to do as efficiently as possible. And I try and always find, is there a better way to do this? And yeah, I think my time, and just being super conscious of how much your time is worth and how much it's worth to your employer and how much it's worth to you and how much it's worth your family, and like making some of those trade-offs, I think it's really difficult. And then probably the last one is just learning. So I'm just always been there's always so much to learn. There's more to learn. And I think that leads to, to the whole reading thing. And the fact, it's funny because I actually realized how much I love reading. And then you realize you've just built this company and maybe it's because you love reading. But if you'd started that way, I love reading, I'm going to get into reading and I'm going to get into publishing, and that would have been the wrong way around. But it's nice that I've come back to a thing that also means a lot to me. And so yeah, I think that whole learning concept is maybe natural that I'm playing in this space, and I didn't realize it. Again, it's kind of another lucky happening. So, anyway.
That's awesome. What has been one of the biggest challenges you've had to go through in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I think I didn't make partner at McKinsey. I think HBS was a big challenge for me. I think getting fired by my last boss was a challenge. All of these things I consider failures, and then I'm sure there's others. But those, I'd say, those are big. And then you could count West Point. The whole experience at West Point was quite challenging. But I didn't find it particularly challenging. I thought it was, yeah. So I think of those three. So McKinsey, you just kind of realize that it probably wasn't the right place for you. I think one thing is you realize that these places are probably not the right place for you, and that the self-selection mechanisms are there to help you kind of realize it for yourself. And then I feel I take a much more sanguine view when somebody's not working out of the company, because you're struggling and we're struggling with you. So it's probably better for you to find a place where you're not struggling. And I just think that's a much more kind of empathetic approach to take with people, because staying in a place where you're not going to be successful, it's nobody wins in that scenario. So but again, it was really humbling, because I built my whole life around it. It taught me how to know what I was worth in the market in a way that I'd never kind of understood that before. And it forced me to build connections and build my network in a way that I hadn't concentrated on, because work was my life when I was there. And then of course at the same time I've had kids and all this other stuff. And then so that was probably McKinsey. And I think HBS was I think what's interesting about HBS is the norms are the same. You just think they're different because you don't know them. Because you perceive that you don't know. And it's almost the perception of not knowing impact your ability to almost observe, I guess. So that's probably my learning from that. And again, I think it got me to the right place in the end, because I felt I didn't know what I was doing. So it's and I like playing the dumb army girl, really. It was a very good game to play. And then the last one, getting fired from my last company. It was just again, it was a blessing in disguise, as they would say. It's oh wait, you're going to pay me so I don't have to work anymore? And I can start my own company? Sign me up. So, but it was, hard. It was hard to all I was trying to do was the right thing at that place. And it was and then you realize that's actually not what he wants. What he wants is for you to stroke his ego. And that's not in the best interest of the company, but that's what he wants. And so it's you learn to forgive yourself for not being successful in everything you do, because the thing that the person wants is really the thing that he should want you to do, right? So I think it was just and then you get a ton of stories from all of these failures. It says more about him than it says about me. So I just think it's those are my takeaways, and I think it's built up a resilience and a kind of ownership of failure that that a lot of people aren't comfortable with talking about. And it's just well, I guess I don't know if have you read Angela Duckworth's Grit? It's all about West Point. Yeah. And it's just like, it's exactly it. It's like exactly the mindset that I feel like I've learned from that or from life or whatever. And it's this idea like, well, yeah, I failed. I didn't do that well, or I didn't succeed in that space. But, sometimes it's me. And of course it's always a little bit me, but like, sometimes it just was not going to work out. Like that equation was not going to add up. And so, moving on and kind of not letting it get you down and impact your confidence. But I have to say the last thing I think is really important is I have been taught confidence by my husband, who's like the most self-confident man I've ever met, and not in like a nasty way, not in a cocky way. I still don't feel like I had or learned that confidence until I was with him, and I've been with him for almost like 17 years now. So there is this kind of like learned confidence. And this, when I remember being terrified of telling him that I was going to be fired, because I knew I was going to be fired before I got fired. And he said to me, he's like, you'll get another job. And I was just like, I just love you for that. Like he didn't portray any, it's like I was almost like a child going to like my parents, right? And this moment of like completely not reacting to it, completely being calm about it, not giving me a hard time about it, just like, oh, you'll get another job. So it's like, it's a super healthy balance to me. And I just think it's so rare. I mean, I think I'm so fortunate to have him, and he plays a really important role in who I am and why I am so resilient as well, I think.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Are there any major concepts or principles or thoughts that you're currently chewing on, either professionally or personally, just big questions, big thoughts, challenges that you're stewing over in your being, anything that you're working on right now? Again, maybe not necessarily business related, but maybe business.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like we're at a point where we're trying to figure out who we should take money from. And, we're doing a bit of fundraising. Like we've raised about 80K up to like, and we're trying to go for what's known here as like an SEIS round, which is like super tax breaks. And you basically give the money back. People basically get half their money back from what they invest in you from the government as like an incentive to invest in small companies. And so you have a limit of like 150K. So we're raising like a round. So it's about 150K. And I've gone through like my friends and family, and we've pulled together about 80K, which is quite good. And I'm really pleased with that. But like, how do we get to the other 70K? And then, and this balance of, my observation of angel investors is like, they've got a bit of money, so they want to tell you what to do. And not necessarily appreciating where you come from and like the expertise you built up over the past kind of years. And so I think we're struggling with this idea of, who and how do we raise and, the rest of the money from this like last 70K, and should I go harder on my network, or should I go, should we crowdfund it, or should we go to these kind of like old men with money and see if they're keen? And it's really difficult because it's like each one of these has a different level of kind of investment of time, and so that's one of the key things we're struggling with at the moment, is just like the ability for people to, who want to be involved and want to be constructively involved, but not because they just want to tell you what to do. Because I think that's like, I'm trying to actively avoid that, I suppose.
Sure. So you want to maintain that independence and vision.
Yeah, exactly. And just like, I feel like for so long, I have been working for people who are less capable than me. And again, this is why I think I lack the empathy sometimes upwards, because it's like, well, you're in charge, dude. Like, how can you not see this? Like, why is this such a battle? This is so obvious. And I might not have enough patience and all this stuff. But so for me, it's a little bit like that. So don't come in here thinking that just, again, because you have money, that you have expertise, like that you understand this more than I do. And I think it's like this real appreciation. And it's not like I'm totally open to being challenged. Like I've surrounded myself with advisors who are actually challenging me and asking questions. But it is a little bit like you kind of have to earn that. Like you have to earn that for me. And I feel like a lot of these guys just think that they earn it because they bring a bunch of money. It's like, well, I know a lot of people with a lot of money, but like, I just think it's really interesting. Yeah. And this whole the whole idea of like, privilege and lack thereof. And yeah, it's fascinating, where the world is at the moment in this
Yeah. No, it really is. It is fascinating. Have you watched The Social Dilemma? It's a Netflix documentary. It just came out recently. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, and it's these big social media executives, or former executives, that kind of talk on the social dynamic that social media is causing on the world with artificial intelligence. It's
awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah, you should. It's really fascinating. Okay, kind of wrapping up here. So, are there any particular questions that you ask yourself on a regular basis, kind of as a system or process to, I don't know, for growth or development, or any questions that you ask yourself on a regular basis?
No, I suppose I'm much more tactical, I'd say, at the moment, in the sense of I don't have anyone that really relies on me. Like, I'm not, nobody reports to me right now. I'm working, and actually I've learned a ton of skills. So my thought process is like, what do I need to learn to do this thing now? And how am I going to find it out? And so like, I'd say I'm probably in a less reflective period of my life and more in a get some shit done period. So, and I do think that goes, I think I have been through a very reflective period, because when I got pushed out, you do a ton of reflecting in that time, but then I think you then you focus on the next challenge and you're building rather than, like reflecting. So I think I'm in a kind of build mode rather than reflecting mode.
Sure. And man, as entrepreneurs for 2+ decades now, man, that is very much a part of the entrepreneur life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is
like, what are you working on now?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, not what you're reflecting on, right?
Right. That's right. I mean, and it's for me, because we're similar in a lot of ways in that I'm a doer, but I've also, as an entrepreneur for so long, I've also had to be almost a parallel thinker, reflector, because you have to keep evolving. You have to keep
exactly.
Improving as an entrepreneur. You got to be always thinking, how can I make my systems more efficient, my processes, and so it's kind of a dual thing. But because right now we're launching, we just launched a course, and so part of it has been, okay, it's the reflective part on the content piece and the creativity piece of the content, but then also the application, like how do we actually deliver this content?
Yeah.
What platform, learning how to use the platform, learning how to develop the platform, all that stuff. So it's yeah. Anyway, I can absolutely relate with that. Any final like tips or advice that you'd want to share with the folks listening, like life tips, business tips, emotional health tips, whatever, any kind of advice or tips that you'd want to share with folks that maybe listen to this?
Yeah, I guess maybe stay off social media. Take your holidays, take stock. I guess those are the things that have kind of made me. Yeah, I think again, it's especially American audiences. I think people don't. It's just too much work and not enough life. And I think be careful that you can kind of get so wrapped up in your work that you kind of miss your life.
Love that. And a comment that you had made earlier that I love, I'm going to be chewing on for a while is how much time are we thinking about optimizing our life, not like optimizing my job or my income, optimizing my life. I think it's such a great thought. And, we've been able to work from home and my wife's worked from home for 18 years. I've worked from home for 15 or 16 years. We homeschool our kid. Like we're in terms of if time were money, we'd be multi-billionaires, right? In terms of family time, right? The top 1% of the world. And, that's a very unique perspective that we have. And one that I'm so thankful for. Yeah. So, that's one way that we have optimized our life, so I've and some may look at this as positive or negative, but so I've missed out on the corporate experience and all that.
You're
stuff.
not missed out on anything.
Right. So, again, like you said, perspective influences, so much our decision-making process and stuff. So anyway, Kelly, I can't thank you enough. It's so awesome to see you, and I appreciate your time and your wisdom and your experience. And I'm so thankful for you.
No, it's so good to see you.
Awesome.
All right.
Great to see you. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.